Hey everybody. I thought I'd do a little series on my Kevin Explains It All, basically about deck building. So what I'm doing right now is I've basically broken down a deck into its key elements. This is the deck Samut. Now before we go any further than that, let me first explain what is the way that I like to go ahead and begin the deck building process. Like, where does one start with all that? And probably the best place to start is just looking through your collection, is seeing the cards that you have currently available, and what from those cards, what you think would be a good deck. So for example, what I've done with my collection is I've created a Legends binder. So in that Legends binder, I basically threw in random legendary creatures that could always be used as generals. And I, color sorted them, things like that. And these are mostly, often scrapped or passed on kind of legendaries. People don't think about building a Kami or a Naru or that kind of stuff. But it's fun to look through because there's a lot of unique mechanics in these cards. And sometimes you just feel like doing something a little different, different than your average net deck. Not that there's anything wrong with net decking. It's a great place to kind of start and get general ideas and information. But I feel a big thing that's fun about Magic the Gathering is building the decks, is actually creating. And I feel like that's where you get a lot of experience. You get to learn your deck. You get to learn what works and what doesn't. So what I want to do is basically just take you through the process as I'm currently building this deck, Samut. Now, Samut has come and gone for me several times. Excuse me. The first is, the reason why is because it has so many abilities, it's hard to focus in on just what you want to do with it. So just for people that don't know, it is a 3-color commander. It's got red, green, and white actually down here. It has flash, so it can be cast at instant speed, double strike, vigilance, and haste. Also, other creatures you control have haste, and for a white, you untap another target creature. So if you go on EDH Rec, you're going to see lots of different decks where people have basically been trying all different manner of strategy to make this fun and unique. I'm going the Voltron route on this, but I have previously attempted to do more of a creature-heavy infect style deck, where all my creatures have infect and they come in with with haste, and they just go nuts. The problem with that is to enable that haste enabler, so to speak. This has to be in play, and if you've already got this in play, then you got to cast your creatures and get them to actually hit the board and go running. That's just an awful lot of mana. So I decided to go more of the Voltron strategy. Now, for those that don't understand what Voltron is more or less it's based on an old cartoon from the 80s where you combine all the powers into one singular attacker, so to speak, and they all basically go and attack together. So probably one of the most standard Voltron commanders that a lot of people think about when they think of Voltron is actually the commander Earl. And as you can tell, I'm super prepared today doing this video. That's why I have everything just like at the ready, which is, I'm lying if you don't know what facetious means, look it up in the dictionary. But basically Earl is this guy right over, not going to find him today, am I? Earl is this guy right here. Same exact colors, actually, and Earl says he's hexproof and gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. Actually, he's the exact same CMC as Samut, so why not just build Earl? Well, for me, I already have an Enchantress-based deck where and that's for Sigarda, the 5/5 flying hexproof, sack-proof commander, and I've had that basically since I started EDH as my very first deck. And Earl is another excellent commander, but the reason I don't do Earl right now is more or less because I like flash. I like double strike, vigilance, haste. Even though you can definitely add that to Earl with the auras, this has it all natively on it. So it just seems like a better deal. Also, something to be aware of, the 3 colors to get it out versus the 2 colors to get it out, huge difference. So just something to be aware of when you're building a deck and different strategies. Now, I typically don't make super competitive decks. I see Alex is watching right now, and he's a CEDH guy, so he could probably give you a much different strategy than how I build. I'm more of what they call a Timmy-based strategy person. I like creature smash. I love when all your creatures come together, they form other creatures and bring out other creatures and do fun stuff like that, and they just go buck wild. So this is more of a strategy for maybe a EDH Building 101 or a Timmy strategy. So let me show you what I did. I broke down everything based on not only the type it is, so we have up front, we have our mana, and I broke it down by basics and then non-basics. Then we also have our artifacts, which are ramp up first, and then the other ones here would be more utility. And then down over here we have our sorceries, and our sorceries are going to be basically the earlier ones over here on the left are going to be more of your ramp style sorceries, and this changes based on colors you have available. A lot of times if you're not in green, it's harder to get an early mana ramp. And then I broke it up with other sorceries. We have draw, and by draw I mean wheels, as well as a few creature-based draw mechanics. And then there's a couple pump spells. This one actually may be making the cut out of here just because it's a higher CMC. It is clever if you have your creature in play, but honestly, if you've got your creature in play, you may not need this kind of card. Now, what is Traverse the Outlands? I love this deck this card in certain decks, but maybe not this one. Search your library for up to X basic land cards where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Put those into the battlefield. So it's a great way to basically thin your deck of basics. So it's not the worst problem, or it's not a terrible card, especially if your idea is to Voltron your commander and basically thin out your deck so you're not drawing dead cards that are just lands all the time. So it's a maybe. And then a couple other enchantments over here that buff up the deck, such as Madcap Skills. Sorry about that. Madcap Skills. Here, I'm just going to bring these up to you. Unquestioned Authority, which gives you pro creatures. Song of the Dryads, which is an answer to a lot of indestructible problems, things like that. Commanders have a hard time with that. Shield of the Oversoul, which gives him indestructible, things like that. And then we get down to the real meat and potatoes. What is the theme of this deck? Now, this deck in particular is actually, as I said before, more of a Voltron strategy. So what I'm doing is, most of the way I'm trying to win is via instants. And the instants, as you can see, I broke it down via CMC. So you have your ones, your twos, threes, etc. And when you do it this way, you'll really kind of visualize what your CMC is for everything. So as you can tell, I'm very much on the low side. There's only a few things that are over in the, like here's one that is in the 4 range, sorry about that. And this particular spell is actually a win con. Grafted Exoskeleton, if you're not familiar with it, gives +2/+2 and Infect. So for a 4-drop, that's a win con. Because if you didn't catch what Samut does double strike. So you do +2/+2, so it's now a 5. Then it double strikes for 10. If that's unblocked, that's a win con with just one card. One interaction kills it. So if you're gonna have things for this particular deck that are over, say, 4 or 5 mana, they have to help you win the game. And that's more or less where I went with this. So for this particular strategy, most of my instants are type of giant growth effects. So there's a Titan Strength, which is a type of giant growth. Vines of Vastwood, which is a hex-proof type of giant growth. God's Willing, which is pro any color you need in case somebody tries to path your creature, that kind of stuff. And other +2 or +3 effects, all at instant speed. And then you also have some protection spells, so like Boros Charm is an indestructible spell, Heroic Intervention, Shelter. So again, this is all very low-costing spells at instant speed. As long as mana is available, I should be able to protect or buff Samut. And then we have some other things like a Teferi Protection and a Fog. These are all taking up the 3 spot. I did throw in one 4-drop, which is a Stonewood Invocation. A lot of people don't know about this. It's +5/+5. Again, you put +5/+5 on the Samut. It is now an 8/9 double strike, so 16. I mean, that's basically lethal in one shot, but more importantly, it gives your creature Shroud at split-second speed. So someone attempts to path your creature, split second, almost you can't really beat that, and now your creature's protected, and it's still going to do the damage you were hoping to do all along. Then, of course, I threw in some answer spells, such as some 1-drops, Path and Swords, Disenchant, Humble, Beast Within, Krosan Grip, Chaos Warp, just your average instants that are going to help you get out of problems. And then just going back on the higher end of stuff, sorry about the camera angles, I know they're not the best. This is why we live stream, because awesome. You know what, hold on just a half second. Alright, so over here we have Madcap Skills, which is a +3 enchantment, and it has Menace, which means that your creatures can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, which is really helpful. As I mentioned before, probably the most powerful card in green as far as dealing with problems would be Song of the Dryads, which turns anything into a colorless forest, basically. So if you put this onto a commander, especially, say, a black commander, they're pretty screwed. They can't really deal with this because they can't really get rid of enchantments. So other than destroying lands, their commander or whatever you put this on is pretty toast. Pro creatures is definitely one way to go, as well as indestructibility and flying. And more or less, that's the route I'm going. So when I broke everything down, just to kind of give you another heads up, again, so I've got my basics, and I always like to have some basics in a deck, because there are times when a Blood Moon goes off or something to that effect, and if you don't have basics, you're host. And then your non-basics, in a 3-color deck, you're definitely going to need some non-basics, some early mana ramp, as well as a little bit mid-game mana ramp, some answers to things such as a Conqueror's Flail. For those that don't know, Conqueror's Flail is a fantastic card when you just want to take your own turn. You equip it to a creature, and people can't cast instants or sorceries or really interact with your turn. Your turn becomes your own. Blackblade Reforged is another win con. It gives +1/+1 for each land you have in play. So if you have even 5 land, that 5 is a +5/+5 to your commander. You see where this is going. This one's a fun one. Prowler's Helm. Equipped creature can't be blocked except by walls. Who the hell plays walls? Kind of fun, right? And then this one's just kind of fun just because I like it. It doesn't necessarily have to be in there, but I do play a lot of instants and sorceries. So equipped creature has first strike, which it already has double strike, so not a problem. Gets +X and O, where X is the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard. So if I get to this card mid-game and I really still need to... I haven't actually gotten this out in play, so I don't know if it's going to stay in, but I have enough instants and sorceries, I think, that if a few of them are in my graveyard, it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's more or less how I build decks. Now, like I said, this is more of a Timmy strategy. There's not a lot of comboing going on here. This is very direct. This is early game ramp, cast general, buff general, kill player. That's basically it. Very simple. That's the basic Timmy strategy. And when you're building a deck, it's something you want to be aware of. What is your land mana base? You know, I often recommend no less than 32 lands. You want to stay above the 30 range in general, because that means 1/3 of your deck is lands. Unless you have incredible amounts of artifacts and free stuff you can drop, you never really want to start a game and, you know, not be able to get at least 2 or 3 lands in your opening hand. Unless, like I said, you're playing a CDH kind of strategy and everything is 0 drops, and that's just how you built your deck. In general, you have to be aware that your mana base is one of the most important parts of every single deck you play. So, but one of the things that people seem to lose when building decks is, what is their theme? What is their strategy? And that's one of the things when you're building off of a net deck. Sure, maybe it wins games, but why does it win games? Does it win games because it's the best deck out there? Does it win games because it turns off other decks? Is it a stack type strategy? Is it a counter-based strategy? What is it about that deck? And when you build your own, you really get to see the interactions, what works, what doesn't. And of course, when you shuffle this all up and you goldfish, which is where you play test numerous times, you draw your first 7 and an 8 and 9, and you see where exactly you are. That's a good way to play test your deck. So, final recap before I end this video. Basically, deck building 101. First off, start with a commander you like, you think you're going to have fun with, you want to test out. Maybe this deck makes it as a permanent deck in my rotation, or maybe it doesn't, I don't know. Right now it's just something kind of fun. I've noticed that in 1v1, it's incredibly dangerous. But when there's 4 players at a table, it's very difficult to actually win, because I may one-shot one player, and then everybody's aware of what's going on, so then they all basically never let them resolve, or they kill them immediately, and I just can't protect myself from the other 2 players. So yeah, that's something I'm going to have to figure out going forward. But so when you're building the deck, you learn what kind of deck you want to have. This one's definitely going to be a Voltron strategy with a lot of low CMC. You want to make sure your mana fixins are right. You want to make sure your early pregame is right. Also, how do you draw cards? That's is what I built in here. How do you buff up your creature or protect your creature? And then with your instants, are these answers? Are these things that are going to help you draw cards or take care of other threats on the board? And that's more or less how I broke it down. So as you can see, basically the CMC of this deck is about 2. Most stuff is basically between 1 and 2. So that's a real good place to be when you're building a deck. and then it's just about drawing and playing and having fun. So anyway, I just wanted to go over that because a lot of people have been asking me, to do a video on how do you build decks, what's the best strategy for a deck, and yeah, that's more or less my way. I'm sure if you asked any of the members in the formats, they would tell you they've got their own way of doing things. They're more maybe control focused, or they're more stacks focused, or things of that nature. This is more of what I would call a Timmy build, where it's get out early ramp, get out early creature, swing, win. So, all right, thanks for watching. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.